Part 2 is all about the ingredients list. How often have you found yourself reading this? And have you ever put back foods based on what you've read? I'm always tempted to ask people this in the grocery store. It's fascinating to learn about what people care about in their food. What are they looking for? Let's discuss this list, and then we'll discuss the items on the list. The order of the ingredients is based on the weight of the ingredients, with the more prominent ingredients first, and then the ingredient that weighs the least listed last. It's a pretty simple system. Also, below the list, you see the manufacturers must also state if the product contains sources of allergens such as wheat, milk, eggs, soy, or nuts. Sugar finds its way on the food label in many ways, about 56 to be exact. Why? Well, if you were a food manufacturer, you would probably be pretty price conscious and want to incorporate cheaper ingredients when possible. Some of these 56 names are much cheaper than others. High fructose corn syrup has the benefit of being rooted in those corn subsidies, which lowers its price. Then there's the idea that companies don't want sugar to be one of the top ingredients. It's a bad look. Instead, they can divide the sugars across different types with different names, and they all can hide amongst the rest of the ingredients. Also, some of these names appear healthier. Date sugar, beet sugar, they sound healthier since they include the names of healthier vegetables. But it's not just the names of sugars that spark debate. There's a new debate over isolated fiber. In the spirit of nutritionism, food manufacturers like to be able to say that their food products contain some of those blessed nutrients, and fiber certainly is one of them that consumers hear about the most. One way to do this is to add fiber to your processed food, and there are 26 versions of added fiber currently under review by the FDA to determine if there actually is a health benefit from them. The Center for Science and the Public Interest says that these versions of fiber don't have nearly the same physiological benefits as fiber naturally occurring in food, and that consumers are being hoodwinked into choosing these processed foods because of their high fiber content, and this could reduce their consumption of real food. A food additive is any substance added to food. This includes those substances used in the production, processing, treatment, packaging, and transportation of food. They are divided into direct and indirect categories, with the direct food additives having to do with the ingredients that serve specific purposes in the food. We'll go through those in a second. Indirect food additives are added in trace amounts by the packaging, storing, or handling processes. Manufacturers prove to the FDA that all materials coming in contact with our food is safe before they're able to go about those means of doing so. Preservatives are among the most talked about food additives. They are used to prevent spoiling or changes in color or decay, and they can often differ with their potential health impacts. There are potential risks and benefits that must be weighed in the case of preservatives. Citric acid, for example, is a preservative that is not considered harmful at all. Nitrites, found as a preservative in processed meats, they help reduce botulism risk, but they also raise cancer risk and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease risk. Sodium benzoate in soft drinks can become a carcinogen, while potassium sorbate has been proven to be toxic. Preservatives are important for food manufacturers to increase shelf life and be able to ship to areas all around the country and beyond without the risk of their food spoiling. We talked about some added sweeteners in the last unit, and these added sweeteners are clearly a sign of processed food. Very few chefs have these in the pantry. Color additives are used to offset color loss occurring when the product is exposed to light, air, temperature changes, and storage conditions. They are found in many processed foods, and some of these are more controversial than others. Banned in Norway, Finland, and France, blue number 1 and blue number 2 can be found in candy, cereal, drinks, and pet food in the United States. I'll post a video on the most common food coloring, caramel color. Have you ever wondered what natural flavoring is? Well, here's a long-winded definition for you. Then there is the artificial flavoring, which is when the natural flavoring is recreated in a lab somewhere. And these artificial flavors are thought to be potentially safer than natural flavors because they are rigorously safety tested and simpler in composition. Another difference is cost. Searching for natural sources of chemicals often requires that a manufacturer go to great lengths to obtain a given chemical, so making it in an organic chemistry lab ends up being much cheaper. A flavor enhancer is used to magnify flavors already present in foods. You'll see these commonly sprinkled into the ingredients list, and the most notable one is monosodium glutamate, or MSG. It was blamed for the so-called Chinese restaurant syndrome, in which people had numbness, weakness, and palpitations after eating Chinese food. But many studies have been conducted, and results are very inconsistent. And here's an interesting review of MSG and headaches, one of the many symptoms of Chinese restaurant syndrome. Fat replacers are just that. It's an attempt to reproduce the creamy mouthfeel, I love that term, without all of those added calories. And then there are the vitamins and minerals that are enriched or fortified. This is most common in foods that have been processed in ways that strip the nutrients away. An emulsifier prevents separation of ingredients and helps keep products stable and predictable. For example, mono and diglycerides in peanut butter will prevent the separation of the oil from the rest of the mixture. If you get peanut butter with just peanuts as ingredients, you'll see that the oil tends to rise to the top. There are also stabilizers, thickeners, binders, and texturizers that are used to keep texture of food uniform, especially when frozen. These can originate from starches or vegetable gums, proteins, algae, seaweeds, and fruits. pH control agents and acidulates are used to control acidity and alkalinity, which can lead to early spoilage. And there's more, including leavening agents to help our breads rise, anti-caking agents to keep powdered food in a powdered form. Humectants are used to keep moisture in. Think about how moist the inside of a marshmallow remains. Yeast nutrients feed necessary yeast in baked goods. Industrial baking also uses dough strengtheners and conditioners to make the dough stable and predictable. And firming agents maintain crispiness of processed foods and vegetables. And if you've ever made cheese before, you're probably familiar with rennet, which is a form of enzyme preparation used to modify the nutrients in a food. And we all know that gases can be used to aerate or create carbonation. That's how our carbonated beverages and nitro beverages and cooking spray cans can all get their trademark characteristics. The question of safety is one that always comes up when talking about food additives. Unfortunately, the answer to most of these ingredients is we need more research. This is because the poison may be in the dosage. A little bit might be just fine, but if you cross a certain threshold, you could have major issues. And think about all of the areas that would need to be researched. Each individual additive would need to be tested for its ability to alter hormone responses, change our gut bacteria, produce byproducts throughout the body, and what about long-term use? What constitutes long-term use in the first place? Unfortunately, with all these variables to be tested, and since biochemical individuality causes each of us to respond slightly differently, the public generally will consume these products until the research is certain that an individual additive is harmful. But Panera Bread recognizes the public's dismay of food additives, and it decided, amongst others, to get out in front of the issue. They put together a no-no list of artificial preservatives, sweeteners, and flavors and colors from artificial sources. You can find this list prominently posted next time you go to Panera.